Arguably, like, potentially my favorite romance of the year. And boy, oh boy, like I can't even like begin to tell you. I was like,
you can't believe that you start from that.
I thought there were a lot of great quotes in here.
Hey guys, welcome back to our channel. I'm Megan.
And I'm Sierra. Happy 2024. For the first video this year, Megan and I thought it would be fun to kickstart the year with a book video. And so we are going to be doing our top 23 reads of 2023.
So the way we're doing this is we have selected 23 books that both of us read last year. And we worked together to come up with our overall ranking to just share our favorite books. So we're going to start with number 23. Work our way all the way to number 1 to share our collective favorite of the year.
We each read, like Megan read 58 books, and then I read 50 books last year, but of those books, I think we read like around 25-ish of the same books within the past year. So obviously that's the list that we're pulling from. So otherwise the list would maybe be a little bit different, but it'd be way too confusing. So we just combined the books we both read.
Starting off with number 23, we have The Silent Woods by Kimmy Cunningham Grant, and the general premise of this book is that the main character, Cooper, him and his daughter Finch are living in this like secluded cabin in the woods, and you know that he's got this like secret past, but you don't know why he's being so secretive, and he's like not able to tell anyone they're there. Like they don't have anyone around. He doesn't let Finch like really intermingle with anyone from the outside world. Like he keeps her life very secretive and private, doesn't let her like meet other people really. And so you're going through the whole book kind of like wanting to figure out why that is, and eventually you do, but I just feel like in terms of interest in this book, it was just kind of like a journey without any interest or like turning point or anything that like made you really want to keep reading. Like there wasn't like a thrilling component to it. It wasn't really a mystery. So those were all things that kind of made it a little lackluster in my opinion, and that's why I just gave it a 3 out of 5, and I feel very indifferent about this book.
I give it 4 out of 5. I think I enjoyed it a little bit more than Megan, but typically like I tend to enjoy books that are a little bit more about the journey than the destination than Megan does. So if you are interested in that kind of storyline, you might like this one. At number 22, we have Daisy Jones and the Six by Taylor Jenkins Reid. If you have been at all on Book Talk or BookTube, then you probably have already read or at least seen this book. If you're unfamiliar, it follows this band, Daisy Jones and the Six, in almost like a documentary style format. The way it's written is that you see like the lines almost that people
are... It's like an interview.
Yeah, it's interview format basically. And it follows like the rise and fall of this band. I think it's based loosely on Fleetwood Mac. I enjoyed it. I gave it 4 stars.
To be honest,
I don't think I like
other than the general
premise
of none of this book is about like they're interviewing a band, I quite frankly don't remember this book. But it was fine when I was reading it. So that's kind of my overall thoughts summed up.
We didn't watch the Amazon Prime show either. We like watched almost the full episode of the first one and then we're like, don't care.
Coming in at number 21, we have The Housemaid by Frida McFadden, which Sierra and I both read on Kindle Unlimited. And this was a pretty good thriller. I didn't read, honestly, that many thrillers this year, but I read a couple by Frida McFadden, and this, by couple, I mean literally 2. But this one was my favorite of the 2 that I read, because I actually thought there was like a good mystery and thriller component, whereas the other one I read this year was Never Lie, and I didn't like that one nearly as much. But The Housemaid was really good and captivating, and I thought the characters were all interesting, and you're trying to figure out what the heck was going on.
Yeah, The Housemaid follows this newly released girl whose name I don't even remember, but she's looking for a job, and obviously her options are limited as like an ex-convict. But luckily this family like is willing to hire her as a housemaid. She can like watch their house, watch their daughter. And like the wife who's hiring her seems very welcoming and friendly upon like the interview, and then like once she's hired it's like a flip switch. Like switch is flipped, and she has like all these demands that she can't keep up with, and she's just trying to figure out like what she did wrong or like what is going on. And then there's a big twist like halfway to 3/4 of the way through the book that kind of like then switches the lens of how you read the rest of the book. So it's very good. I recommend it. I give that one 4 stars.
I did as well.
At 20, we have Red Queen by Victoria Aveyard. This is a YA fantasy. I don't even remember the name. Or Mare Barrow, which honestly, what a name.
Yeah, why have that be the name?
The entire time I was reading, I was like, bone marrow? Anyway, this basically takes place in this world where the people that have red blood or silver blood, people who have red blood are like the low lives, and then like the royalty and very like well-to-do people have silver blood. And Mare, who has red blood, realizes that she has powers that typically only are had by silver blooded people. And so she's like swept into like the silver blooded royal family. There's 2 sons that like kind of cause like a little love triangle type of deal. And yeah,
It was
this is
good.
part of
It
a
was
trilogy.
interesting, but like, I don't think either of us plan on continuing to read the trilogy.
Like, I'm not saying never, but I finished this back in the summer and haven't really thought about picking it back up. It was still good when I was reading it, but 4 stars. I rate like a lot of books 4 stars, so that's gonna be like a theme for most of this.
At number 19, we have The Martian by Andy Weir. It's almost sad that we can't re-include Project Hail Mary, but because we're just doing for 2023, we both read this last year, having already seen the movie. We loved Project Hail Mary, so both of us just wanted to eventually like pick up this book to admire his writing and his characters again. This book was still really, really good. A little bit more sciencey than Project Hail Mary, and like, again, not in a way where I think it's like too confusing and too much of a turnoff for like your average reader. Andy Weir just has such a way with writing really well developed and likable characters, especially when it's like the whole journey is like surrounding one main character and there's like little other characters supporting the main character. It was just a really fun, enjoyable read.
If you're unfamiliar with the premise, because there's also a movie that you may have seen, basically there is this group of astronauts who are doing a mission on Mars. There's this big solar storm or something that forces them to leave, and on their way out,
behind.
The main character,
he's dead.
Mark Watney, gets like taken out by a piece of equipment. They leave him behind.
He's a botanist. He has to figure out how to live on Mars until maybe he can get in contact with
humans on Earth,
or just try and survive until their next mission that he knows is eventually going to make it to Mars arrives.
At number 18, we have The Right Move by Liz Tomford. This one is on Kindle Unlimited, so if you have that, then you can read on there.
So this is the second book in the series. They all can be standalones, so we both read this one first. Neither of us have read the first one. But the main female character is friends and like worked with as like a flight attendant with the main character, the main female character from the first book, and she ends up meeting a roommate last minute, and the flight attendant's brother happens to be on a professional hockey or professional basketball team, and so she ends up saying you can just room with him. So it's a forced proximity,
grumpy sunshine,
fake dating. He's not grumpy.
Yes, he is.
He's not that grumpy. Anyways,
okay,
all that being
I
said,
think he is.
It was just a very fun romance.
At 17, we have When in Rome by Sarah Adams. So this is actually my last book of the year. So it follows this pop star, Amelia, who is feeling really burnt out from like all of her celebrity fame, pop star stuff that she has to do, and is a really big Audrey Hepburn fan, and so I guess there's an Audrey Hepburn movie. Is it called When in Rome? I don't know.
No idea.
But Audrey Hepburn travels to Rome, Italy to take a break, and she decides to travel to Rome, Kentucky, because that's the closest Rome to her, to take her break. She breaks down. Her car breaks down. Her car breaks down in front of Noah Walker's house, and he then comes out and helps her, offers her a place to stay until she can get back on her feet. Also, she's like a pop star in this small town, so like that causes like a stir and gossip among the town. And
he owns a bakery
forced
shop.
proximity, kind of grumpy sunshine.
Small town romance. The
It is fun.
classics.
Sarah Adams is good for lighthearted, quick, easy romance.
Up next, we have A Flicker in the Dark by Stacey Willingham. This was my favorite thriller of the year. I just felt like I honestly, I'm like, I can't remember what it was about. Okay, I remember what it's about.
You guys know how
the
it
main
goes.
female character, her dad is in jail because he is a serial killer. So when she was growing up and before he was convicted, there were a bunch of girls going missing in town, and then they come to find out that her dad killed them, and so he's in jail. And then now you jump back to the present day, and there is kind of the same thing happening where there are girls going missing, and she's getting a weird sense of like deja vu, or just like, why is this happening again? And so just the whole time you're really trying to figure out what's going on.
And she has like
why
people in her life that like she's like kind of suspecting might be doing this, and like you as the reader are also trying to figure out like, did they do it?
I just had no idea. Like, I did not see the ending coming.
Because I feel like your mind goes every direction that it can possibly go, but then the ending still
you get
like,
talked out of
not.
it, and then I still wasn't seeing it.
So, good thriller, good twist. At number 15, we have Tomorrow and Tomorrow and Tomorrow by Gabrielle Zevin. This book is literary fiction. It follows Sam Green and Sadie Green and Sam Mazer. And they both are really into video game development. They met when they were kids, like in the hospital, because Sam was getting treatment for something, and Sadie, her sister, was in the hospital, I think. But that's how they initially meet. They both have like a love for games, and that's how they kind of connect as children. And as they grow up, they maintain that friendship until they kind of drift apart, but then meet again as young adults and realize that they still have that love for video game development and decide to work together on some projects. And the book basically just follows like this relationship of like almost like lovers, but then like not quite, better off as friends, business partners, like the ebbs and flows of their relationship.
And I know everyone that has talked about this book, like, you know, the premise is gaming, and everyone says like it's not really about gaming, and it's not. It's more so about like the journey and just like the relationships between these three main characters. I like this book and I appreciate it for what it was, but given that I'm not like the biggest literary fiction fan, that's kind of where this like drops down for me a little bit. But it was still a good and entertaining read.
Yeah, I liked it. It was something different than what I typically read. I thought there were a lot of great quotes in here, so if you're like into like annotating and underlining your books and stuff, this would be a good one for you if you haven't read it.
Coming in at number 14, we have The Bodyguard by Catherine Senner. So this book follows Hannah and Jack, and Jack is a famous actor who is needing to come back into town for some family stuff, and Hannah works for a security agency, and so
she's a bodyguard.
He wants to keep it pretty low-key that he needs a bodyguard because he doesn't want his family to be super concerned. So he comes up with the idea of Hannah posing as his girlfriend, and so there's a little bit of fake dating in this, and as we all know with fake dating, that ends up leading to some complicating relationship factors. I thought this book was fun. There's kind of some unexpected twists in it in terms of like, it's not your typical romance, but like it also is. But it was a fun read. I really enjoyed this book, and yeah.
At number 13, we have 7 Days in June by Tia Williams. So this book follows two authors who met in high school, fell in love for like 7 days or whatever, and then completely lost contact. It's been, I don't know how many years, but they're both adults at this point. Both published authors, and then they eventually like meet again in New York City, and I don't know if it's June again, but like it is that short 7 days in June, where they get to kind of like talk, resolve unfinished business, figure out there's still those feelings there. And like the fun part is that like they're both authors, and so like they both have kind of subtly been writing like to each other, about one another, like within their respective genres.
And they've been like admiring each other's works without like being in any contact. I have heard really good things about this book before I read it, and then I read it and I was like, I like this way more than I thought I was going to. It was just very entertaining.
Had like a little bit like a deeper meaning behind like just like the, you know, fun little rom-coms that we've been shouting out.
Yeah, they're dealing with like different things like addiction and drugs and things like that. And I will say the ending kind of like, I don't know, I kind of feel like the ending was like rushed or not entirely what I was expecting, but you know, that's neither here nor there. Number 12, we have Fourth Wing by Rebecca Yarros.
Arguably like the book of the year.
The book of the year. Very highly anticipated. I didn't know when I was going to get around to reading it, but obviously we both got around to reading it this year. This was like the year we really kind of were like, okay, we'll jump into fantasy.
We'll try it, you guys.
And I will say, I read this after I read ACOTAR, so I feel like my preference is probably still like more ACOTAR than Fourth Wing, but I definitely appreciate this book and what it offered, and I thought it was very entertaining. The premise is basically the main character, whose name is Violet. So there's different quadrants. The writer's quadrant is the one that like you're basically gonna die or make it, and so like it's a very high skill level quadrant. Otherwise there's different ones, and the main character is not someone you'd expect to like be in that quadrant, but she comes from a family of writers, so she kind of gets like forced into that quadrant, and so you're following her and her peers who are also like joining the writer's quadrant, trying to do all this training, and she's very much not your typical writer, but she has different strengths that she plays to and that you see her use throughout the book. And then there's also a third year writer whose name is Zayden, and he is the love interest of the book, but also he's initially
the bad
they don't seem like they like each other. I like this book. It was enjoyable. I hear not so great things about Iron Flame, so I've got to admit I'm a little hesitant on continuing, but this one was good.
At number 11, we have Love Theoretically by Allie Hazelwood. Now, let me get this out of the way. If you have read Allie Hazelwood books and you don't like the premise, you will not like this. People seem to get very annoyed that she writes the same thing over and over. I happen to like, you know, going into a book knowing what to expect. So this is another one of her, like, STEMinist books. This follows Elsie, who is a theoretical physicist, and Jack, who is, what's the other one? If it's not theoretical, it's
something else. I don't know.
The other type of physicist. Initially, it's like this fake dating of Jack's brother, but then like she's actually like
she's got like a side gig where she like pretends to date people, and for whatever reason they might need someone to be fake dating them, And then she ends up realizing, like, this is Jack's brother, and they come and meet each other during, like, a work conference type of meeting. And she's like, oh, this, like, doesn't look good. This is awkward.
Because she's, like, kind of hiding stuff. Like, as the fake girlfriend, she was, like, kind of, you know, selling this fake story about her life. And then in this work, you know, environment,
so it comes
she's trying
off
to,
like she seems very much like a liar and untruthful.
And so, like, they kind of, like, are rubbing each other the wrong way throughout this work interview process. But then, like, Jack kind of likes her. And he's drawn to her, and she kind of likes him, and so it's just like this, you know, back and forth of them trying to figure out their feelings for one another, seeing if she'll come clean, and, you know, all that stuff. Will she get the job? Who knows?
At number 10, we have The Soulmate Equation by Christina Lauren. I read this towards the beginning of the year, and I just remember really enjoying it. I gave it a 4.5 out of 5 stars. Essentially, the premise of the book is you have the main female character. Her name is Jessica. She's a single mom. She's kind of got a quirky friend, and her quirky friend is trying to make sure that she gets back out into the dating world. And they often go to a coffee shop to mingle and chat and work a little bit. And there is Dr. River Pina, who comes in. He's a regular. They call him
Americano.
Americano. He's like, the cappuccino? And so he's like constantly, they see him almost every day.
And, like, he seems very standoffish, like, wouldn't give any of the time of day. They figure out that there is this app in development that, based off of your DNA, is supposed to give you, like, different matches based off, like, your percentage of compatibility. And so, for fun, they both decide to do it as part of, like, this, like, beta trial type of thing.
Come to find out that the main and female character and Dr. River Pina are, like, the highest of high standards of, like, a perfect match. And so because he believes in his system and she is also kind of like, I'm willing to give it a try if it says this, they both are kind of like, okay, I guess we'll, like, start dating. And I just think that they're both likable characters, very cute and, like, caring about one another, but also trying to, like, they don't know each other. And so they're kind of like, how do we make sure this is a genuine connection, but also, like realistically, we can't just, like, love each other right away. So I really enjoyed this book. There's, like, a little bit of a twist at the end, but it all ends up working out. Next we have Before We Were Strangers by Renee Carlino. This book kind of reminds Sierra and I both of 7 Days in June in the sense that it's, like, a little bit deeper of just your typical romance. There's a past and present timeline. I think you also maybe get dual POV between the characters, so, like, I love all of that. But initially they meet in college and they kind of develop a relationship then. And then they end up separating. I don't even remember why, honestly.
It's like they lose contact because he goes out of the country for a different, like, a National Geographic thing.
And so they separate, and then they live in New York City, and so, like, he comes across, like, her at the subway and just, like, sees her for, like, a split second, and then she's gone. And then he, like, can't stop thinking about her. And then they find each other again. And so you're kind of figuring out, like, why the relationship didn't work in the past at the same time as, like, they're building a relationship currently in the present. And I think that was nice and different about this book is that, like, since it's not your, like, happy ever after everything's perfect kind of romance book, it, like, it has a more realistic lens on, like, the ups and downs and some miscommunication. Not, like, super annoying because I don't like that, but it's just, like, more realistic. Number 8 is Mine Would Be You by Kay Jamila or Jamila, I'm not sure. I read that on Kindle Unlimited, so I don't have a physical copy. And I read this also at the beginning of the year, so you're going to have to excuse my lack of summary.
It's basically...
I don't know what it is.
Okay.
But I rated it 5 stars, so I felt like I needed to, like, fight for it to be up higher, even though I don't know if I have as strong of feelings, like, now. But essentially the main character, whose names I do not know, she ends up flirting with a guy at a bar, and they kind of, like, have a little bit of a fling, and then she goes off on her own way. They didn't get any contact information, so she thinks, okay, I'm never going to see him again. And then she shows up at her ex-boyfriend's wedding, because they're in the same friend group, so she feels obligated to go, and she finds out that that man is the best man. And so they're reacquainted, and he was obviously very interested in her. She was interested in him, but they, like, didn't get any information from each other. So at the wedding, they hit it off again, and the whole book is kind of them just developing their relationship and getting more serious, kind of dealing with some of, like, the quirks of, like, dating within a friend group, and also, like, the history of having her ex-boyfriend in the friend group. And so I just thought it was a really cute, fun romance. The boyfriend was very, like, golden retriever energy, so if you like that, you'd probably like this book. And she was a little bit more of, like, the grumpy side of the relationship, so I just thought it was fun, and I liked it a lot when I read it.
Yeah, I thought it was like a fun, easy read. I gave this one 4 stars when I read it. At number 7, we have Done and Dusted by Lila Sage. This one is also on Kindle Unlimited. And this romance book, like, while just being like a nice, quick, easy read, just like had Megan and I in a chokehold for whatever reason. It was super short, so like I read this within the span of one day. It basically follows the female main character who is a well-known barrel racer, if you're into horse riding, you know, any of that stuff. But then she's kind of like losing her touch, and she was like injured and is scared to get back to riding, and so she goes back home. Her family lives on like, you know, farm, ranch, whatever, and just like wants to kind of get back to her roots so she can figure out how to ride without getting scared. When she gets back home, she is reacquainted with her brother's friend that she grew up with, and he like slowly starts to help her, you know, he slowly starts to help her get used to riding again. They develop a friendship that then turns into more of a relationship, and it's just very cute. I really liked it, and I've only still read this as like the only cowboy romance that I've read, but it piqued my interest in continuing into like cowboy romance stuff.
Number 6, we have Billy Summers by Stephen King. This is a thriller? Is that what you call it?
I don't know if I'd call it a thriller. Crime fiction is what I've heard it.
Okay, good.
Yes.
Yeah. This is crime fiction. I gave this a 4.5 stars. Sierra gave it 5 stars?
No, 4.5.
4.5 stars. Okay, so essentially this follows the main character. His name is Billy Summers, and he is a hired assassin who kind of only takes jobs that he ends up killing bad guys, so he's not so much of a bad guy.
That's how he justifies himself.
And he decides that this is going to be his last job, and then he's going to be done with it because he's going to have all the money he needs, and then he's just going to retire and no longer be an assassin.
Obviously, easier said than done. He knows that he's going to be on the run, essentially, like when he dips out.
So basically, you're following his journey of him being on the run. It's
also the lead up to the crime of like him kind of preparing and stuff. He also has to learn how to pass the time, and so he takes up writing, and you get to see the story that he's writing, which then provides like more insight into like his like his growing up and his background. You get to like see him form these like fake relationships with people, but like in your head you're like, you know that he's like a hired assassin, so it's weird that he's like, you know, acting so normal and like behaving normally. There's also like a subplot kind of romance, a little bit kind of,
and then that kind of, there's a twist at the end is what I'll say.
I really enjoyed it. I think Stephen King, from all the books that I read, like he really does such a great job just like fleshing out his characters and like giving them like so much depth, and so that's what makes it fun to like read these characters who like are going on a journey. As Megan would say, she's not typically a journey person.
But I enjoyed this book. Coming in at number 5, we have 20 Years Later by Charlie Donley. Our physical copy is no longer with us at the moment because we loaned it out.
It's available on Kindle Unlimited though, right?
Yeah, it was
so,
at least.
This book follows the main character whose name escapes me. She's an investigative journalist, and for a story that she wants to cover, she just found out that about 20 years after 9/11, there's been new evidence uncovered about one of the like victims who was found at the crash site. She's been identified, and like she wants to do a story on like the new DNA that was uncovered. She then figures out that the person whose DNA was recovered was actually like on trial for a murder investigation, like around the time that I know.
So there's like happened. 3 different storylines going on, because I feel like it jumps to the past a little bit with like
the actual murder investigation.
Like, yeah, and then so you're getting that plot line. Then you're also getting like the journalist present day,
because she has like her own story going on,
and like she's got like family stuff that's being like you start learning about, and she's like trying to go on this like cross country journey, like one because she's doing the journalism story thing, but also she's like, I've got some other unfinished business that I need to worry about. And then you have like the actual investigation but present day of her trying to figure out what's going on.
So I, having now read like a couple other Charlie Donley books, he like keeps things going where it's like very similar style of like a lot of different timelines, a lot of different perspectives, and like then it all kind of intertwines and comes together at the end. So Megan has only read this one so far, but maybe I'll read more in the future. But it's just fun. I feel like I haven't read a lot of other like mystery thriller books like that. So I give this one 4.5 stars, I think.
I gave it 4.25. Coming in at number 4, we have Yours Truly by Abby Jimenez. This is technically the second book in the Part of Your World duology, but you can read them as standalones. I really enjoyed this book. The main 2 characters are doctors, and the male main character is like a new doctor at the hospital, and so they don't know each other very well, but they like slowly start to learn more about each other as they do with like their coworkers, so they kind of have to. And I don't remember much about this book. I know that the male main character, because you get dual POV in this, and he's anxious, but he's anxious and written about in a way that is like very relatable, and so I thought it was endearing to read about that, and it was just very much like you like both of the characters, and you just see their romance and relationship blossom. So it was cute, it was fun.
There is like a weird third act thing, I feel like, common in Abby Jimenez books.
Yeah. Didn't love that in this, but
if you overlook
the lead up to that, I love this book. So I think it would still be a good read for most people.
At number 3, we have Recursion by Blake Crouch. This one was so like mind-bendingly good. Blake Crouch writes like sci-fi type of books, and so the premise for this one is that in like our present day, like when we're first entering the book, there's this illness going around where people are like starting to feel like they had past lives that they can remember just as vividly as the life that they're currently living. So they're like, I have two timelines that like
start
met up,
going
and
crazy,
like, I know both of them.
And like you come across like the male main character in the book, he's a cop, and he's like trying to stop this woman from jumping off a building because she's like freaking out over like what is going on in her mind. So that's where you start, and you're kind of like, where are we going from here? And boy oh boy, like
I can't even like begin to tell you. I was like,
you can't believe that you start
to
from that, and then like the rest of the book you read, it's just like it's way more.
There's like genuinely so much that happens.
So much that happens, I can't sum it up at all. The book is almost split in two components though. The first half is kind of like you're trying to figure out what is this mystery illness, how did it come about, and then you kind of get some answers on that like halfway through the book.
And then you're like, how do we save the world?
The second half of the book, you're literally trying to figure out the apocalypse.
Like it was so good though. I read this like entirely pretty much in one day when we were driving from Cincinnati back to Iowa, and like I was just enthralled the entire time.
It's one of those books where I have tried to figure out like what would be good follow-up books for something like this. Dark Matter by Blake Crouch was a book that we had read before by him, which was also really good, but I did like this one more.
At number 2, we have The 7-Year Slip by Ashley Poston. This was just like such a good book for me. Arguably like potentially my favorite romance of the year, even though our number 1 is also a romance. But our main character, Clementine, moves into her aunt's old apartment after her aunt passed away, and she realizes that the apartment occasionally slips you 7 years into the past. And so I think that like the type of like magic, what is it called?
Magical realism.
Magical realism is the word that is like described for this book. And there's no like rhyme or reason.
There's no other magical component. It's just like this apartment.
You go in, sometimes you're in the present, sometimes you're 7 years in the past. And so when she moves in 7 years prior to that, this guy Ewan, I think that's how you say his name, was living there like over the summer when her aunt was like traveling abroad or something. And so that's how like they meet. Initially like she doesn't know that it's in the past, and she's like,
what's going on?
Confused, obviously. But they like hit it off really well. I loved their banter. I feel like they just like got along so well.
Without comparing every good romance book to Emily Henry, like it kind of gives that same level of banter that I feel like you're used to from her books.
The guy was so endearing. Like honestly, probably like one of my favorite book boyfriends that I've ever read. And then obviously like, the apartment goes back and forth, but like
and she has no control over like when it takes her back.
In the present day, they then like meet again, like organically, and it's like this weird time hurdle of like she knows that she met him, but then like she's like, he remembers me. And there's just so many, like the thing that tied it all together for me and like made it 5 stars was just like the small little details that got put in that were like, oh, because like the time 7-year like gap, like this is how it affected like her life now and like his life really then to like lead to now, and like it's just all interconnected, and it was so cute. Love this one. 5 stars for me.
Coming in at number 1, we have Happy Place by Emily Henry. Gave this one 5 stars. Sierra also gave it 5 stars. We unfortunately read it on Kindle because it was only released in hardcover.
Waiting to buy a paperback.
Essentially this story follows, I do not know the main characters.
Wayne and Harriet.
Okay. So they were in a relationship and engaged.
Yeah.
And they decided they weren't going to tell their friends because it was like pretty recent.
Well, they had broken off their engagement.
Yes. Explain it.
So like they have this big friend group in college. Basically, they have one last summer getaway at someone's
like lake house, beach house,
whatever
whatever house.
And so Wynn and Harriet don't want to tell their friends that they are no longer together because they don't want to like dampen the weekend, especially when they figure out that it's going to be like their friend's wedding is happening this weekend. So like, oh, we really can't say anything now. And so they have to like kind of, it's like a little bit of fake dating because they have to act like they are dating even though they were dating. And there's like glimpses into the past, why like things,
you kind of like you figure out why their
out.
relationship maybe like wasn't working out, and they'd been separated for a while, so you kind of get a glimpse into like their separate lives that they had like kind of grown accustomed to in the time they've been separated. And while they're forced to be on this trip together, it like forces them to have to like communicate and like talk through and revisit some things about their relationship
and figure out if they may or may not work in the future. Who knows?
I really like this book. My favorite, well, possibly Beach Read and Happy Place are my two favorite Emily Henry books. So it was a really good book.
And with that, those are our top 23 reads of 2023. Feel free to comment some of your favorite books. Give me some recommendations.
If you made it all the way through this video, make sure you give it a thumbs up, and you should subscribe to our channel down below if you are not already. Let us know which videos you guys want to see from us in 2024, and we will see you guys in our next video.
Bye!